Hi everyone, my name's Shiva Hossainzadeh. I'm with Coldwell Banker Commercial. I know you guys have been watching some of our videos, and today I want to talk about a topic that's really important for business owners, something that sometimes gets overlooked. If you're a business owner and you're looking to rent a commercial property, you don't want to make this mistake, so we're going to get into it today. And today's topic is going to be on zoning and permitting. It's a very important part of the entire process because anywhere that you go to open a business, you're going to have to obtain a business license. And some people don't realize that they need to do that due diligence and check with the city in advance of signing a lease, because the worst thing that could happen to you is now that you've signed a lease agreement, you're married to that contract, you're legally obligated to this transaction now, but you didn't check with the city in advance of your use. You go in to get a business license and your application is denied because the zoning doesn't fit what you're trying to do with the property, and now you're stuck to a lease agreement. What are you going to do? So we're going to talk about the steps and what you need to do in advance of signing a lease to make sure that your use is approved. The first step is checking with the city. Any city. If you're in Long Beach, if you're in Orange County somewhere, if you're in LA, doesn't matter. Every single individual city has their own municipality code, or what we commonly call a muni code. And you want to call the city department of planning. So you're going to look up online wherever the city is that you're interested in. Look to see the phone number for the planning department. Contact the planning department directly yourself, and you're going to give them the property address. Tell them your intended use with the property, and they're going to let you know if your use is permitted or not permitted. Without the address, they can't give you that information, so you have to have the exact address available when you call the city, and then they're going to tell you what the code is and what's allowable by right with that code. And the reason why the city has a muni code is because they want to differentiate and spread out uses throughout the city that make sense within the community and the neighborhood that property is located in. As an example, they don't want manufacturing warehousing in a retail storefront area, and they don't want restaurants to be hidden in an industrial park. And so they have specific zoning codes to allow for specific types of uses. Once you've called the city and they tell you if your use is approved or not, one of the other questions you want to ask is, what kind of improvements, if any, is going to be required to the space for your particular type of use. More recently, ADA upgrades are becoming of concern. Is your building accessible for wheelchairs and or individuals that are needing assistance for ADA compliant laws? So do you have an ADA restroom? Do you have walkways that are up to code? And whether or not you're going to have to bring those things up to code. Not every use is going to require that. Some uses will. Some cases, it depends on how much improvement work is going into the building. Some cities have a threshold, a dollar amount. If you're going to invest, $20,000 into tenant improvements into the space, we want 20% of that to be in upgrades for ADA accessibility. So that means that you're going to have to do some level of upgrades if your space doesn't have that. Other particular uses, as an example, daycare facilities, whether it's a child daycare, adult daycare, you have to be to code no matter what, because it's the type of use that you have. If you have children or adults that are disabled or elderly on your property, or young children, then you have to meet all the code requirements regardless of how much money or the threshold that's being spent in tenant improvements. Another thing is fire sprinklers. Do you need them? Not every use does. Especially, again, goes to that threshold depending on how much money you spend on the property. The city may require that you have to install fire sprinklers. Again, if you're an adult daycare or child daycare, automatically required. Doesn't matter how much money is being invested in the space. It's just because of the type of use that is going to be on the property, it's going to automatically require that, and that's going to cost money and time, and it's important for you to understand those costs up front, again, before a lease is executed. Now, let's just say you go to the city and you find out that your use isn't approved outright. It's not allowable. What are your options? Well, you have two options. The first option being that potentially the city would allow for an administrative use permit, or what we commonly call an AUP. Or secondarily, you might be allowed to have something called a conditional use permit, which we call a CUP. An AUP is a much easier, simpler process to go through, and what it means is that your use is approved, but maybe you don't have enough parking at the property to meet your requirements. And so therefore, you're going to have to go through that process through the AUP to get a variance on the property to allow your use because you're short potentially on parking, or maybe there's some other issue that's existing that the city's saying we would allow it, but you have to go through the process regardless and get the AUP in place. And when you go through an AUP, the timeline is generally 3 months to 4 months. And it's a much simpler process because you don't have to go in front of the Planning Commission. You just go in front of a head planner generally for review and sign off. There is an application fee still that's tied to the AUP. It's substantially less than it would be for the conditional use permit or CUP. It's usually around $3,000 to $5,000, but the reason why you pay an application fee is because you are going to have public comment or public hearing. So they will send out notice to the community to let them know about your particular use going into the property. And there will be a scheduled hearing date where public is allowed to come and voice any concerns they have. Doesn't usually mean it's an outright denial. It just means that they may put some restrictions and requirements in place within your specific use at that property in order for it to be fully approved. And so that's an AUP. A CUP means that your use is not zoned at all. It does not meet the zoning code. It does not meet the parking requirement. You're asking now the city to make a conditional approval on your use for you to be able to operate your business on that property. That is going to require a much more difficult and longer process. You typically will be 6 months in that application process, and the application fee ranges between $10,000 to $15,000, substantially more expensive. And the reason why is because it does take more staff time. You will also have to send notice out to the community, to the public, and there will be a public hearing. But that public hearing is going to be in front of the Planning Commission. So another level up from just a head planner within the city, and the Planning Commission has to be the one that's going to sign off on your use to get the approval for you to be on site. So when you call the city, if they tell you that your use is not zoned outright, then you want to find out if an AUP or a CUP is an option for you. And the great news is that the city generally does not want to waste your time. They will tell you if they feel as if there is a path forward with an AUP or a CUP for you to get the approvals. Sometimes they will tell you, do not waste your time. We will not allow the use here. We don't want this type of use at this particular property. So even though you can go through the CUP, it is very likely that we're going to deny that application. So therefore, you as a business owner will know up front that it's not worth for you to spend the money and the time to go through that process because it's likely going to get denied. And when you do get denied, that application fee, that substantial amount that I mentioned earlier between the $4,000 and $5,000 and $10,000 and $15,000 is non-refundable. You will not get that money back. It is money spent for the city, for their staff, and for the public hearing. So they will not refund it. So make sure that you get as much information up front for each process. And every city has a little bit of a different timeline and a little bit of a different cost associated with it. Some cities might have a smaller fee. Some cities might have a higher fee, but it's important for you to call and do your due diligence and find out. The last thing we want to talk about today is how long will those permits take. If you do have to go through the AUP, CUP, or certain construction on your property to make sure that your use would get the sign off and approval from the city, you want to just know what those timelines are, and you want to negotiate those timelines into your lease agreement up front. If you're going to have to go through a permitting process and it's going to take you 3 months, you want to make sure that you have a contingency in your lease that those 3 months you have the right to terminate. So after that period of time, if the city is not going to approve your permits or they're not going to approve your use, then you have a built-in contingency in the lease agreement where you can terminate that lease and walk away. You're going to have to spend some money, but at least you're not going to be now tied to a lease agreement in which an owner can hold you liable and still come after you for those rental payments if you don't have that contingency built into the contract. So it's really important, if you're a business owner and you're just getting started and you're looking at sites, do not overlook this very important step. Make sure you call the city. Make sure you find out that your business is approved and or what it would take for your business to get approved. and you need to do that up front. It is your responsibility. It is not anyone else's, not the landlord's or even the listing agent or even the broker that's representing you to do that. It's your responsibility, and the lease even specifically states that. So if you sign that lease and you don't do your due diligence up front, now you're tied to a lease agreement and in a very bad position. So this is why working with brokers is important, because we also can guide you and walk you through that process. So if you're a business owner looking for an agent to rep them, please reach out to us. Again, we're specialized in commercial real estate in Long Beach, LA, and Orange County markets. We're here to help you. Please subscribe. Please watch our channel. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to working with you. Again, Shiva Hossainzadeh with Coldwell Banker Commercial.